By far my most successful YouTube video was when I ranked every baseball movie from 1984 to 2021 by how well the actors played baseball. And the one thing I've learned doing this YouTube thing is that when you have a successful video that has a clear opportunity for a part 2, you gotta capitalize on it and do a follow-up as soon as possible. So just under 3 years since the original, here's part 2 where I rank every baseball movie prior to 1984 by how well the actors play baseball. The criterion rules are going to be the same as before. The movie has to display baseball action at least the college level or above, has to have at least more than a token scene or two of baseball, and this won't just be a ranking of the actor's ability, but also how well the film captures the overall aesthetic of baseball. If it's a historical film, was it historically accurate? Do they get the rules of baseball right? Do the strategy and game situations make sense? Does the crowd, atmosphere, and field conditions look realistic? And of course, do the actors actually look like baseball players when depicted on screen? The last list was 40 movies, and surprisingly, this one is 42, many of which are very, very, very old films. Not gonna lie, watching and reviewing a silent film from 1919 can be a little rough, and is a significant reason why this video took 3 years. Okay, is today the day I finish The Busher? Okay. They're talking. He's wearing a jersey. Yep. He's wearing a jersey. Well, don't know what they're saying, but he's wearing a jersey. Yep, there's a jersey. He's got a hat. Their widow brown stockings, mine won't do. I don't know what that means. Okay, I can't do it. Turning it off. But I trudged through and finally finished the video, and we'll get into the list after the intro. Number 42, The Babe Ruth Story. In part 1, I was pretty harsh on the movie The Babe, but I didn't even realize at the time it wasn't even the worst Babe Ruth movie. The Babe's problem was it took all the well-known traits of Babe Ruth and amped them all up to 11. Ruth was a little bit hefty in the last few years in the majors. Well, they have 300-pound John Goodman portray him even in his early 20s. Ruth was known to be antagonistic with umpires, even getting suspended once for punching one. The Babe has him getting suspended 5 times in one season for assaulting umpires. Ruth was known to be competitive with his teammates. The Babe makes him seem like the biggest jackass in the world when dealing with his teammates. But at least the Babe was taking traits Ruth somewhat had to begin with. In The Babe Ruth Story, the character is nothing like Babe Ruth. A guy that is known to be very competitive, rough around the edges, and one of the boys is instead portrayed as a dim-witted, shucks softy, and on top of that they portray him like a Christ-like figure. You may think I'm exaggerating with that last statement, but he literally heals a disabled child.
Hiya, kid!
Hiya, babe!
Oh, Denny, don't!
Hiya, Babe Ruth!
The doctor said, they said he'd always be an invalid. Would spend his life on his back. Now look at him. Just look. Oh, God bless that man.
He isn't suspended because he struck an umpire or suspended for barnstorming like in real life. No, he's suspended because he accidentally hit a dog with a batted ball in batting practice.
Gee, babe, Pee-wee won't die, will he, babe? He won't die.
No, son, he won't die.
Rushed the dog to the hospital to save its life.
What do you mean you won't operate just because he's a dog?
And missed the game.
You're suspended indefinitely. What?
He's further suspended because gamblers approach him to throw games, and Ruth beat them up. On top of the previously mentioned scenes that paint Ruth as the greatest person in life, Ruth spends all his time spending money at orphanages, or visiting sick children and promising to hit home runs for them, which him calling his shot in the World Series saves a kid on his deathbed.
I'll sock a home run into the center field bleachers for you.
Babe! Don't forget Johnny!
He pointed to the flagpole in the center field bleachers, plainly indicating that's where he means to park that next pitch. He did gentlemen, that was the most dramatic gesture ever seen on a baseball diamond.
Why did they do this? Why a massive puff piece portraying Ruth as the greatest human that ever lived that could literally perform miracles? Well, Ruth was diagnosed with cancer near the end of 1946, and Hollywood, doing what Hollywood does, rushed to get a script done and get this movie out before Ruth died to capitalize on public sentiment. I guess they succeeded because the movie's premiere was 3 weeks before Ruth's death. The baseball in the movie is also almost non-existent. William Bendix, who plays Ruth, has terrible throwing form when they do show him, and they don't even show a single defensive play in the movie other than this. This was one of the first movies I watched for this video, and I started to panic because if every old baseball movie was this bad, I was in for a very painful experience. Luckily, this movie ended up being at the bottom of the list, and even some of the bad films I watched during this project were still enjoyable to watch. For instance, number 41, Chasing Dreams. This is canonically the very first Kevin Costner baseball movie. And with Kevin Costner's track record with baseball movies, I had some high hopes going in. And oh my god, this movie did not disappoint. It was by far the most entertaining watch of any movie on this list. And not for the reasons you'd think. This movie is squarely in the so bad it's good territory. I haven't laughed this much while watching a movie in a long time. I'm gonna say it, it's The Room of baseball movies. First, to address Kevin Costner. He was in the movie for all of 45 seconds and played a very minor role that had no impact on the plot whatsoever. But here's what's funny. If you look on IMDb, it says this movie came out in 1989. Therefore, it shouldn't be on this list. But the movie didn't come out in 1989. The best I can tell is this movie was filmed sometime in either 1981 or 1982 and was so bad that it didn't get a theatrical release. Kevin Costner was a no-name actor at the time, and his appearance in the beginning of this movie was also one of his first roles. Costner had his breakout as an actor in 1985 with the movie Silverado, and the best I can tell is off the success, David Brown, the writer and star of Chasing Dreams, was able to use that to get a theatrical release for this movie. Then, in 1989, Costner really breaks out with the baseball film Field of Dreams. Chasing Dreams has a very similar title to Field of Dreams, and it's also a baseball movie. So they are able to get a VHS release where they plastered a 1989 version of Costner on the cover, and his name is top billing. Got it in video stores sitting next to Field of Dreams, and hoped misguided people looking to buy or rent Field of Dreams would accidentally pick up Chasing Dreams. This is a time-honored strategy worked to perfection by the Asylum with movies like Transmorphers, Snakes on a Train, Atlantic Rim, and it works. I still hold bitterness as a kid when I accidentally rented Gordy thinking it was Babe. Chasing Dreams so blatantly tried to capitalize off of Costner that Costner actually sued Prism Entertainment, the company that distributed the film, in 1990. However, I can't find the outcome of that lawsuit anywhere. If anyone knows if there was a ruling or a settlement, let us know down in the comments. Chasing Dreams is thoroughly entertaining in how incompetent it is. It tells the story of Gavin, who struggles to manage his time between chopping wood all day, going to English class at the local community college, and honing his baseball skills in hopes of making the community college team. The title of the movie makes no sense because you'd think it'd be him chasing his dream of playing baseball, but he had never played baseball before in his life, had no interest in baseball, and was just standing by a field while a rec team was practicing, and a friend said, "Why don't you join us and try and hit?" It's clear he's never held a baseball bat in his life, but somehow he hits a home run, and the coach of the rec team says he should dedicate the next 6 months to baseball so he can make the community college team. And I have to say, this coach is one of the worst hitting coaches I've ever seen.
Okay, Billy, let's see you put one out there in a train yard. Nice even swing now. Come on, keep them eyeballs straight forward there. Watch the ball. No, you're golfing it now. Come on, level swing. That's a little better. Try it. That's it. No. Don't turn your head when the ball comes. Look right at it. Watch it hit your bat. Confront it.
I'm here, Parks.
Gavin works on his swing for 6 months, and it does not get better. But somehow he keeps hitting home runs. I'm not going to talk about his fielding because they only briefly show it, and it's an embarrassment. Against all odds, he makes the community college team, and he hits home runs in every single game. All of this is weirdly paced and horribly acted. It's tough to follow what story they're trying to tell here or what the central conflict is. Is it him trying to manage his time? Is it his relationship with his family? Is it him caring for his brother who has some sort of disease they never specify? Is it him trying to become a professional baseball player? Is it the relationship between him and his teammates? The relationship with the coach? his relationship with his girlfriend that just appears midway through the movie. It's not clear what they're focusing on. This movie is all over the map. They even have a scene out of the blue where he gets drunk with his teammates, they play a prank on a cop, and it's never brought up again and has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. The soundtrack is hilarious too because there's 3 songs that they recycle a half a dozen times. There's what I'm going to call generic rock riff number 1. Budget Survivor montage song. And Dollar Store Iron Maiden. The acting by David Brown is Troll 2 levels of bad.
Thanks for the beer. I didn't know I was so thirsty.
There's another wait, what the heck just happened scene where he meets his girlfriend, asks her to dance, and then a random person picks a fight with them. They have a chaotic back alley brawl where the cops show up, and then they just stop and go, "See you tomorrow," and the scene ends.
Pop, let's get out of here. Hey, we're gonna grab some pizza. Listen, someone grab my cap. I got it. Let's go. See you guys later.
Anyway, as his college team is trying to get to the state championships, which I don't think is a thing in college baseball, Gavin is approached by the St. Louis Cardinals to sign a contract. Or I should say, the St. Louis organization. And they want him to sign and start playing in the minors before his college team's season is up. In 1982, that's not how that works. There's a draft for college players. You can't just go sign a college player up like a free agent. But really, why should I be focusing on that when the real WTF of this scene is that a professional baseball team wants to sign this guy? After this, there's one of the most baffling scenes I've ever seen in a movie. Gavin walks in on his parents talking about their debt due to hospital bills for his brother. Then Gavin tells them that St. Louis wants to sign him, which seems like an obvious solution to their problems. He got an offer that's almost double what their debt is from St. Louis. Any competent screenwriter would have linked these two things. But they never pieced together that the contract offer could solve the problem of the debt, and instead Gavin talks about declining the offer because his family needs him to be around. While he's in St. Louis getting the offer, his brother dies. When he finds out, he tears up the contract, goes into a deep depression, and stops playing baseball completely. Only to return for the state championship game, which again is not a thing in college baseball, and they set it up. Tie game, bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, Gavin coming to the plate, and then this happens.
Gets a sign, steps up to the plate. Miller looks in.
He may not recognize faces at first, or recall much of anything up to the accident.
Gavin gets full amnesia and is unable to talk, until, at an unspecified amount of time after the game, his dad expresses his feelings towards Gavin, and Gavin exclaims, "Dad?" and roll credits. What the hell just happened? What dreams is he chasing? Did they just do $1 Million Baby in the last 5 minutes of this film? What the heck is going on? You might be asking, why doesn't this movie hold the bottom spot in this list? David Brown is clearly the worst baseball player of any actor in any movie ever made. The movie makes no sense whatsoever with how baseball works, but against all odds, every once in a while, an extra makes a decent baseball play. I don't know how this movie can be so inept at everything, but somehow have this.
Smith hits it to third. Stafford digs it out. Throws to second for one. And on to first.
Or this. All that said, if you want to have a bad movie night with friends where you heckle a film, I would recommend this one fully. Number 40, Rhubarb. We've seen a baseball movie where a kid inherits a baseball team. We've seen movies where animals play baseball. But Rhubarb merges those two concepts to come up with the brilliant idea of a cat inheriting a baseball team. After an eccentric millionaire takes a liking to a stray cat that he sees chasing dogs and being mean to everyone, he decides to catch the cat and bring it home, naming it Rhubarb, and is so fond of the cat that when he dies, he gives his entire estate to Rhubarb, including the baseball team he owns, the Brooklyn Loons. They mentioned the movie was made in partnership with the SPCA, but animal cruelty was a bit lax in those days because there's a number of scenes where the cat looks distressed. The cat in this movie is the same cat in Breakfast at Tiffany's, making it the only cat in cinema history to win 2 Patsy Awards, or Picture Animal Top Star of the Year, and has over 35 acting credits on IMDb. The players of the team end up petting Rhubarb before each at-bat, which brings them luck. Most of the baseball on screen is just MLB stock footage montages, but there's a few scenes where the actors portray the action and, it looks interesting. One thing that got a chuckle out of me was the impressive special effects they used to display someone causing a rain delay by dumping dry ice out of a plane. One of the most notable things about this film is it's one of the first acting appearances of Leonard Nimoy, who shows up in an uncredited role as one of the team's players. Number 39, Roogie's Bump. I didn't know going into this that Rookie of the Year was a remake of Roogie's Bump. Although in this one they do go a little overboard with his superhuman strength. I was curious how fast this throw would actually be, so using the angle of the United Nations building and Empire State Building in this shot, I found the exact location of the throw and where it hit. Found the distance and used the time elapsed, and he threw the ball about 1,250 miles per hour, or just over Mach 1.6. It's also pretty crazy that a kids movie has Philip Morris product placement in it. Tobacco companies really got away with the hook 'em while they're young strategy in the past. As far as the baseball, this movie does a simple, tried and true method of just showing real MLB footage, most of it coming from an August 20th, 1953 game between the New York Giants and Brooklyn Dodgers. Here's Hank Thompson grounding out to second, Dusty Rhodes popping out to second, Gil Hodges popping up to short, Jim Gilliam grounding out to short, Darrell Spencer grounding out to third. One very annoying thing about this movie is over all this footage, they just played the same 6-second audio loop of the crowd. They also don't make any effort to line up the footage used with the game situation in the movie. All these shots have the New York Giants as the opponent, but when the kid pitches, the opposing team is just some nondescript uniform. They very rarely tell you what the score of the game is or what's going on in the game, and just show a bunch of clips with that 6-second audio loop playing over and over. There are some legit Dodgers as part of the cast with Roy Campanella, Russ Meyer, Billy Lowe's, and Carl Erskine with speaking roles, which probably isn't a good thing as they aren't the strongest actors. For a story of a kid playing Major League Baseball, this movie is very dull, and they only have the kid pitch twice the whole movie. The second appearance being the one where he loses his ability to pitch. So really it's just one scene where they show him actually pitching, and it's kinda weird. Number 38, Girls Can Play. This is quite possibly the dullest movie I've ever seen. First, there's no soundtrack. The entire movie is just people walking into a room, saying their lines, and on to the next scene. Considering it's supposed to be a murder mystery thriller, it's shocking how boring it is. I'm gonna spoil it because nobody should watch this and show you the last scene of the movie when the big bad guy of the film that's murdered 2 people and kidnapped a woman gets taken down. Remember, this is supposed to be the climax and most exciting scene in the movie.
You ride with him. I've always wanted to be a backseat driver.
Take care of this guy.
Well, that'd be fun.
I wavered on if I would include this on the list since it's softball and not baseball, but the teams depicted are supposed to be semi-pro, so I left it in. It's clear that the actresses with speaking lines have no idea how to play softball, from unathletic swings, unathletic throws, not knowing you can run through first base. But it's also clear that everyone else is an actual softball team. Some of them look pretty good, and some of them have solid swings. But again, the movie is just dull. Number 37, Fear Strikes Out. This movie has a pretty famous scene of Jimmy Pearsall, as played by Anthony Perkins, absolutely losing his shit. If an athlete today takes a break from their sport due to mental health or is upfront with mental health struggles, I constantly see reactions by the public that far too often mental health is ignored in sports and applaud the player for being one of the first to make their struggles public. But Jimmy Pearsall, the real-life main character of this movie, had a very public struggle with bipolar disorder back in 1952 that they made a book out of, made this movie, and he still continued to play in the majors until 1967. As far as athletes being public about their mental health, Pearsall may be the first. And that's what makes this story interesting. Seeing how a movie portrays mental health and how it was treated back in the 1950s is fascinating, including electroshock therapy and lithium, which were real treatments administered to Pearsall when he was admitted to a mental hospital in 1952. However, what isn't fascinating is watching Anthony Perkins try to play baseball. It's very clear that he has never played baseball before, and they don't do any camera tricks to try to cover that fact up. He doesn't know how to field, how to throw, how to round a bag, or swing a bat. There's also something about his posture and how he wears his uniform that screams, not an athlete.
You're not an athlete.
They also don't do a very good job on continuity. Here's a left-handed pitcher starting his windup, and now it's a right-handed pitcher throwing the pitch. They did use actual footage of the real Jim Pearsall occasionally, which they probably should have done more of. The movie also doesn't make an attempt to portray any other real players. The highest uniform number on the 1952 Red Sox was 39, but here's number 57, number 54, number 63, number 65, and number 56. This was probably intentional, but there's not a single uniform number other than Pearsall's 37 that matches a real player from that Red Sox team. I even saw number 13 thinking, oh, that has to be a real player's number, but 13 happens to be the only number from 1 to 33 not in use by the 1952 Red Sox. The famed freakout scene I shown earlier was also completely made up. Pearsall only had one home run in 1952, and it wasn't against the White Sox, and it was well before he was committed to a mental hospital. In fact, he had already been demoted to the minors for 3 weeks before he was admitted to the mental hospital. Now, Anthony Perkins can act. And the story of this movie is very interesting, but every time he tries to do something on the diamond, it just takes you out of the story due to how goofy it looks. I ran into a bit of an issue while making this video. Watching every baseball movie before 1984 means including movies before 1930. That means a lot of silent films. Silent films are an incredibly different beast, and hopefully I'm not offending anyone who's over the age of 110, but audiences were a little bit easier to entertain back in the 1920s. Cinema was in its infancy, and basic techniques that we take for granted today on how to film and edit video that any TikToker in 2025 does on a daily basis were still being developed back then. Watching one of these silent films and then watching a movie made just 10 years later is night and day when it comes to basic filmmaking ability. That made it incredibly difficult to even include silent films in these rankings, and it's similar to comparing baseball stats from the 1880s to today, where the two time periods are so different there's no point and really no basis for comparison. I considered omitting silent films from these rankings altogether because of how impossible it is to honestly rank them against films made later, but ultimately decided to include them and group them all together in the next section that I'll go through pretty rapid fire. With that said, number 36, The Battling Orioles. This movie is basically the plot to Double Dragon, except instead of two brothers rescuing the damsel in distress, it's 15 elderly men who were on a baseball team together 50 years prior. They flash back to 1874 to show how they were the roughest, toughest team in existence, and I can't follow anything that's going on. Just a lot of fighting and not a lot of baseball. Number 35, The Busher. The oldest movie on this list. I hate the main character's pitching motion, I hate that this ball looks like it's caught but they treat it like it landed, and I hate how this ball clearly hits the ground but they treat it like it was caught and he gets the force out at second. I also hate that I can't watch this movie without constantly thinking that everyone on screen died over 30 years ago. Number 34, Casey at the Bat. This movie is about the titular Casey, who was a big-time baseball player on a small-town team in the 1890s, known for hitting home runs over a quarter-mile in distance. He ends up signing with the New York Giants, but the local barber, Elmer Putnam, played by Sterling Holloway, who is most known for being the original voice of Winnie the Pooh, sabotages Casey along the way, both because he's trying to steal Casey's money as well as Casey's girl. They do have the standard setup from the Casey at the Bat poem where it's the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs, with Casey up and the game on the line. And while he does strike out in this version, and people think he threw the game, it's later revealed that Putnam and his associate swapped the baseball with a trick ball, so they clear Casey and decide to replay the game. Number 33, Headin' Home. Babe Ruth plays a fictionalized version of himself, and it's kind of cool seeing Ruth in 1920 when he was only 25 years old. This movie makes you realize how almost all the video we see of Ruth is when he was already in his 30s, because he looks incredibly young here, younger than I've ever seen him look in video. Ruth does the same plot point in The Natural where he makes his own bat, and while it's Babe Ruth, and you'd think that means the baseball scenes would be pretty good, most of it is just him taking pitches at either head height or in the dirt, and the ump calling it a strike regardless. Only once do they actually show him swinging and hitting a ball. Near the end of the film, they just show actual Babe Ruth footage from the Yankees. Number 32, Slide Kelly Slide. This movie makes its lead character as unlikable as possible. Jim Kelly is a hotshot rookie that tries out for the Yankees, and man, do they do everything possible to make him seem like a bastard. From mocking all the players during his tryout, to sexually assaulting a woman, to his big crime in the film, not sliding at home and getting thrown out because of it. Kelly does redeem himself by the end of the movie, though. He makes up for all the pompousness and sexual assault by actually sliding at home to win Game 7 of the World Series. After that, all is forgiven. But from a baseball standpoint, this movie does a much better job than some of the other silent films. They have a couple actual major leaguers appear in the film, including brothers Irish and Bob Musil, Mike Donlin, and Hall of Famer Tony Lazzeri. And for a movie almost 100 years ago, they make an effort to make the baseball look okay. It looks like they used some footage from the 1926 World Series between the Yankees and the Cardinals, and the rest was just actors acting it out. And that's it for the silent films. Back to the talkies with number 31, Whistling in Brooklyn. This is a screwball comedy starring Red Skelton as Wally Benton, who is trying to stop a serial killer while also being mistaken as the serial killer and chased by police. Baseball comes into play in the last sequence of the film when Wally, in an effort to get away from the police, takes the place of a pitcher on the Battling Beavers, which may be a reference to the traveling House of David baseball team as they play the Dodgers, while simultaneously trying to warn a detective who the killer is. Hijinks ensue as Wally writes a message on a baseball and in an effort to throw it to the detective, accidentally picks off 2 runners. There's also a cameo by Hall of Famer Leo DeRocher, who was player manager for the Dodgers at the time. Is the baseball action good at all? No, not really. It's pretty bad. But it's supposed to be a goofball comedy, so I'm not going to put it at the way bottom of this list. Number 30, Take Me Out to the Ballgame. This is a Frank Sinatra and Gene Kelly musical about 2 baseball players that are vaudevillians in their spare time. The focus of this movie is clearly on the musical set pieces and not baseball action, as almost all the baseball is done through montage. This doesn't have a ton of baseball action in it, and what it has is a bit of a mixed bag. Some of it is decent looking, but you have some bad spots like this swing, and probably the worst slide I've ever seen at home plate. Sinatra surprisingly has an okay swing, but really there's not a lot to rave about here. Number 29, They Learned About Women. This is a Gus Van and George Schenk musical about two baseball players that are vaudevillians in their spare time. If you're getting deja vu, it's because the previously discussed Take Me Out to the Ball Game is a remake of this movie. Even though the film was 19 years before Take Me Out to the Ball Game, and it's in the very early days of talkies, I still think the baseball in this is slightly better than Take Me Out to the Ball Game. They show full pitches a number of times, they cut in a little bit of real baseball stock footage from time to time. Nothing overly impressive, but I still think they did a little bit better of a job than Sinatra considering the time period difference. Number 28, Hot Curves. This is like the baseball version of Much Ado About Nothing. You have two baseball players in their respective romantic relationships where a series of miscommunications, as well as one of the players just being a jackass, leads to a series of breakups, emotional outbursts, and eventual reconciliations. On the baseball side of things, not much makes sense in this movie. One of the main characters is accidentally added to the team when the scout mixes him up with a player with the same last name that was supposed to sign. The player is terrible, but eventually he pitches and strikes out the team's best batter with a few wicked breaking balls. And he's such a good pitcher that he stays on the team and is made the starting catcher. Okay. One thing I found cool was I was wondering how a 1930s movie got a ball to move like that on the pitches. It looks way too smooth to be a superimposed ball. It's way too early for movies to be able to do any kind of impressive special effects, so it's most likely gotta be in camera. I finally spotted it. It's a ball traveling along a string run through the catcher's glove and to the top of the backstop. Actually pretty cool technique to get some unique ball movement. But those three pitches are the only time in the movie they do that trick. The rest of the pitching and hitting looks pretty bad. Number 27. Don't Look Back, the story of Leroy Satchel Paige. This movie covers the life of Satchel Paige, obviously, but with a focus on him setting up barnstorming games against white teams, specifically the Dizzy Dean Allstars, in an effort to establish the legitimacy and talent of Negro League players to lead to the integration of Major League Baseball. This is historically true, as Dizzy Dean and Satchel Paige had a number of barnstorming games in the late 30s and early 40s. The movie also highlights the reality that white baseball fans and media didn't take these games seriously or highlight them at all. The Society for American Baseball Research highlights this. While the African American press front pages lauded the Monarchs' victory, crafting detailed columns on the game's play and atmosphere, the white newspapers provided the bare minimum. The New York Times mentioned the attendance and named a dozen of Dean's teammates. From the Monarchs, only Paige was noted. The Sporting News literally buried the story, giving it 1/16 of a page, including the box score. The movie does condense these barnstorming matchups into one game, while in real life it was a series between Dean and Paige covering at least a half dozen games over 10 years. While the movie is telling a historically important story, it's a made-for-TV movie and the quality of baseball action shows this. Lots of close-ups where you can't see much, lots of pitcher deliveries that look like it would result in a 50-mile-per-hour pitch, and by far my pet peeve when it comes to baseball movies or sports movies in general, relying way too heavily on an announcer to describe what's going on instead of just showing the action.
Now, little no-count scribbler got Todd down to first, and now Geringer's going to try his luck again, folks. He hit it, a line out to left center, and Todd's going to third. Todd's going home. They waved him in. Geringer's around to second. Todd sliding into the plate. He's safe. They called him safe. I mean, it was close, but they called him safe, and the game has busted wide open.
This announcer, who gets way too much screen time, says a whole bunch of racist things while broadcasting the Dean versus Paige barnstorming game. Clearly not a guy announcing for a black audience. But for some reason, they have the same announcer for the Negro League World Series, which doesn't make any sense. For Paige's appearance in the 1948 World Series, they just show the actual footage of the game. Since the footage is in black and white, they get around that by showing it from the perspective of people watching it on TV and throw in some movie cuts that are also in black and white of Satchel, which doesn't match the quality of the real footage and stands out a bit. As far as made-for-TV movies depicting this time period with Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson, Soul of the Game from 1996 would be my recommendation over Don't Look Back. Number 26, Kill the Umpire. William Bendix plays one of the most unlikable people in the world. Despite his family being in financial trouble, he loses 3 jobs due to skipping work to go to local baseball games. And while at all those games, he spends his whole time yelling at the umpire about bad calls, even if he didn't see the call.
Strike one.
You thief! You robber! Kill the umpire!
He's so over the top he even tries to assault an umpire. Finally, he comes to grips with his irresponsibility, gets a new job, and tells his wife he won't miss work due to baseball ever again.
It'll never happen again.
Oh, Bill.
No, this time I mean it, Betty. I'll get another job and I'll stick to it. I will, honey, I promise.
A hard smash to right field. Cummings makes a running catch of it. Fires the ball to second base, holding Brooks at first. It's O'Brien at the plate, and here's Lucier's pitch. Ball one. Taken by Mitchell at second. Brooks streaking for third. Here comes the throw.
You're out! Out! You robber! Kill the umpire! He was safe by 2 feet! That man was safe. Did you see that?
Look,
he was safe by 2 steps. He wasn't out.
Look, hey, order something or you'll be out.
Huh?
No drinks, no free television.
Oh, well, draw one.
This certainly has been an exciting series of exhibition games, and both teams are in excellent shape for the long season ahead.
After his wife threatens to leave him, his father-in-law, who has far too much patience, does him a favor and gets him a job as an umpire so he can work and watch games at the same time. But not wanting to be an umpire, even though his wife will leave him if he isn't, he tries everything in his power to not get the job. Yeah, I know it's supposed to be a comedy and over the top, but my God, I couldn't stand this guy, and he made it a bit of a rough watch for me. As far as the baseball in it, it's fine. Some of the faraway shots are pretty good, a couple of them are really good, but once in a while they make some weird decisions, like while he's at the baseball academy, they cut to stock footage from a Yankee game for some reason. They really play up how much people hate umpires, with even police officers in charge of protecting them saying they deserve to die.
Call the Rangers. Call the police. They'll murder Johnson. I hope so. Yes, sir.
Number 25, It Happened in Flatbush. This movie follows a trend where every baseball movie in the early 1940s took place in New York, probably due to the 1941 World Series featuring the New York Yankees and Brooklyn Dodgers, and was the first time the Dodgers were actually good in over 2 decades. This movie follows manager Frank McGuire, who was run out of baseball 7 years earlier due to single-handedly losing the Dodgers the pennant due to an error, giving him the nickname Butterfingers. However, the elderly owner of the Dodgers has faith that he's the guy to bring a pennant back to Brooklyn and hires him at the beginning of the season, despite everyone still thinking he's a loser due to his error. She seems to be the only one that has faith in him, but she dies right before opening day, and the new owner, a rich Manhattan socialite, has no interest in baseball. Frank wines and dines her, convincing her to sign high-priced players, which brings the Dodgers from last into first and competing for the pennant. Now, where I thought the movie was going was her finding out that he only did that to make the team better and that he doesn't really care about her. Standard rom-com stuff. But the movie completely avoids that and instead makes the tension come from a sports writer that constantly brings up McGuire's error 7 years ago and how McGuire can't handle the heat, which causes McGuire to doubt himself and go full Billy Haywood on the team to the point where the players sign a petition to have him removed as manager. As far as the baseball, there's a mix of actual footage of the Dodgers from 1941 to 1942 used, and a little bit of the actors trying to act out plays, which doesn't look quite as authentic for obvious reasons, and sometimes they speed up the footage to make it look faster. For the actual footage from Dodgers games, I tried to figure out if it was all from one game, and it looks like all of it is from the 1941 World Series against the Yankees, but they're playing the Cardinals in the movie. And they didn't particularly take care in stitching the footage together too well. Here we can see Yankee Red Rolf grounding into a fielder's choice, which is from the first inning of Game 5 in the 1941 World Series, but then they cut to Dodger Dolph Camilli hitting a double into right center from the second inning of Game 4. Here's a single by Charlie Keller that scores Red Rolf and sends Joe DiMaggio to third. They show the same play twice from 2 different angles. A strike him out, throw him out double play with DiMaggio at the plate and Red Wolf caught stealing third to end the top of the first in Game 5. They show 2 Yankees scoring what I believe is the top of the 9th from Game 4, but in the movie it's supposed to be the Dodgers scoring in the scene and they cut to a Dodger player scoring. Why not pick footage from a different game, maybe against the Cardinals to match the movie? Why did they pick World Series footage? Well, it makes sense because when I made my video about baseball during World War II, I found almost no good footage exists for any regular season games at that time. but did for the World Series because they would make highlight compilations for each World Series that they could send to troops overseas to keep them up to date on what was happening at home. For that video, I used almost exclusively World Series footage because it was all I could find that was decent quality and from multiple angles. I'm guessing when they made this movie in 1942, they did the same thing. Number 24, It Happens Every Spring. This is the story of a chemistry professor who stumbles on a chemical that repels wood. Being a huge baseball fan, he uses the chemical to become a pitcher for St. Louis. Not the St. Louis Cardinals, no, just St. Louis. All the teams in this movie are just generic cities, and the uniforms just have the city name, and the caps have a city abbreviation or single letter on it. Now, the professor is supposed to be a teacher and not an actual baseball player, so him not having the form of a professional pitcher is more of a feature than a bug in this movie. It's a plot point when he starts out that his main difficulty is throwing strikes, because a chemical that makes wood repel a baseball doesn't do much good if the batter doesn't swing. They use a little animation technique to make the ball do crazy movements in the air and add a little sound effect for good measure. But the obvious question is, if the wood repels the ball, why does the ball then arc back down into the catcher's glove? Shouldn't it just fly off into a random direction? There's some weird choices in the movie regarding other players. This guy is supposed to be a Chicago Cub, but he looks like he's 50 years old. I was able to find out that it was Bill Allington, and he was 46 at the time of filming. Allington did play minor league baseball though, and actually was the most successful manager in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League as head of the Rockford Peaches, the team that's depicted in A League of Their Own. Some of the extras they do show, although very briefly, have decent swings. But the movie does cut to stock footage a lot, and that stock footage even has an artifact at the bottom. Like some movies, they go a little overboard with the stats, with the professor getting at least 38 wins, which in 1949, no starting pitcher really came close. From 1935 to today, there's only one pitcher that even got 30 wins, Denny McLain in 1968. It's a silly little movie, kind of interesting, and while they don't do anything egregiously bad or that looks terrible while depicting the baseball, there isn't anything overly impressive either. Number 23, The Jackie Robinson Story. You would think this movie should hold the number one spot on this list. A film about Jackie Robinson, where Jackie Robinson not only plays himself, but it's filmed in the prime of his career just after his 1949 MVP season. Clearly, he's going to be the best baseball player of any actor in any movie ever filmed. This should be number one by a long shot. Unfortunately, the director of this film seemed to put no importance in making the baseball on screen look good or like an actual game. Every scene is filmed in an empty minor league baseball stadium. To make it look like Ebbets Field in New York, they double expose the film to add buildings into the outfield, which actually bleeds through Jackie Robinson at times. Most at-bats are filmed in side profile or in close-up, which just looks bad, and in order to make Jackie Robinson look insanely fast, they just speed up the film sometimes, which seems unnecessary considering it's Jackie Robinson. Sometimes they don't show any action and just have an announcer say what's happening. This movie should be near the top of the list. It's a player starring himself, telling one of the most important stories in baseball just 3 years after the events happened, and still 14 years before Jim Crow laws were deemed illegal. It's so close to the real events that anytime they have an opposing player be racist towards Jackie Robinson, they have to use a nondescript team without logos so it can't be tied back to a player that may still be in the league. It's a story so important that, in my opinion, the best baseball movie since Moneyball, and really the last big budget baseball movie we have, is about the exact same events. But the on-field baseball action in this movie just doesn't put in that much effort. Even from a story standpoint, I don't know what they're going for at times. There's a weird side plot about a player named Shorty, whose problem is he's too short, so he only pops up because he's constantly under the ball. So they give him platform cleats to make him an inch taller, and he gets a hit. It looks silly and has nothing to do with Jackie Robinson. This movie is culturally significant and worth a watch due to it being made in the middle of incredible racial tensions involving a man central to the civil rights fight telling his own story. But from a filmmaking standpoint, this movie misses the mark pretty heavily. Number 22, The Comeback Kid. Most of this movie is like Bad News Bears or Mighty Ducks, where a rough-around-the-edges adult becomes a track coach for some misfit kids. Where does baseball come into play? Well, he was a minor league pitcher at the start of the movie who gets cut from the team. Later in the movie, after finding the motivation to get his life together after working with the kids, he makes a comeback to baseball as a hitter, hence the comeback kid. For the baseball scenes, it looks like they used a minor league team in the area, dressed up the actors in teams' uniforms, and did a few baseball shots as most of the players look competent. John Ritter's pitching motion doesn't look very high effort or like he's throwing more than 60 miles per hour, but I've seen worse. His swing looks okay. You can tell he's actually hitting a baseball. I think the guy throwing to him is taking a bit off it though. There's very little baseball action overall. I almost considered not including this movie in the video because of how little action it has, so that knocks it a few spots in the rankings. There's no fielding shown whatsoever, which also knocks it a little bit. But what's on screen is fine. Nothing egregiously bad. There's one thing I have to bring up with this movie though. It has one of the most massive tonal shifts near the end that I've ever seen. When I said it was like Bad News Bears or Mighty Ducks, that's just the initial setup and where you think the movie is going. The movie as a whole, though, tonally is like a mix of Bad News Bears, The Wrestler, and Grave of the Fireflies. What was mostly a lighthearted coach teaches kids comedy turns tragic out of nowhere. And I mean nowhere. The final 15 minutes turns into kids and adults trying to process grief together, and the previous hour and 15 minutes didn't matter at all. I don't know whether to say it was a good or bad decision on the movie's part, but it was completely unexpected, which definitely makes it memorable. The ending also had a light bulb moment for me. Oh, so he's the comeback kid and not John Ritter. Ah, okay. Number 21, The Kid from Left Field. This is about a kid whose dad is a concession worker for one of the worst major league ball clubs. The kid becomes a bat boy and his dad, an ex-major leaguer, knows what's wrong with the team and feeds strategy to his son, who coaches the players behind the scenes, and the team gets much better. The manager hates the kid to a comical degree.
You've been giving advice to my players, haven't you?
Just a little bit, sir.
I know where you're getting your baseball dough from. You're getting it from your old man, huh?
Yes, sir.
You think he was a good ball player, huh?
Yes, sir.
He wasn't. And you're just like him. And now you're through like he is. Because you're not fit to be in baseball.
But eventually the owner finds out that it's the kid that has the team playing better and fires the manager and makes the kid the manager. Through a series of events, it's found out that it was the dad all along, and he becomes the full-time manager, leading the team to the pennant. The movie has a familiar face in Lloyd Bridges, who you might remember in Airplane and Hot Shots, and is a decent movie overall, but it's lacking in the baseball action department. For way too much of the movie, the cameras are pointing towards the stands, and you only see reactions to what's going on. It again has one of my biggest pet peeves for the final game, where a majority of the dialogue is an announcer describing what's going on. Sometimes what the announcer is describing doesn't even match up with what you're seeing. There's a little difficulty in rating this movie as well because it does what a lot of sports movies do when they have a bad team become a good team. They have to have that montage of the team playing poorly, and in this instance, it's comically bad. But the actors are trying to be bad on purpose, so it's difficult to rate. In the end, they do have some static shots from behind home plate that look fine, but you never see a player making a play in the field or anything other than that static camera shot from behind and a shot at the first base bag. They also have a pitcher with a ridiculously long windup, which wouldn't be a problem, but he does it with runners on base. They have a player steal home on him where he starts his windup, stops, and then throws home, which should be a balk regardless. It's kind of dumb that they had to insert something that no sane pitcher would do with runners on base. Number 20, The Kid from Left Field. This is a made-for-TV remake of the 1953 film, this time starring Gary Coleman as the kid. It's basically the same movie. Even the baseball action is similar with the bad play montage and very few actual good plays, mostly with a static shot behind home. There's some nonsense going on like doing a double switch to move a right-handed pitcher to first and bring in a lefty, but that lefty is facing a right-handed batter, and then switching back afterwards to face another righty. No manager in their right mind would bring in a lefty for one batter if that batter is a righty. They also do the sin of relying on a play-by-play announcer for the last game in the movie, but what did surprise me is they did properly describe the infield fly rule.
Infield fly rule call, but Grasso comes in to make the play anyway.
Which is a small thing most movies like this wouldn't get right. There was one big change from the original, and this change cracked me up because it reminded me of something from King of the Hill. In the pilot episode of King of the Hill, Bobby gets a black eye from playing baseball. Hank is later seen yelling in public, and rumors swirl around town that Hank is beating his son. This gets back to Child Protective Services, where an overzealous CPS worker decides to check in on Bobby. This leads to a number of misunderstandings where Peggy also gets a black eye, and the CPS worker thinks it's from Hank. During his visit, he sees Hank yell at Bobby, sees Bobby and Hank having a play fight, and takes it as Hank beating Bobby, to the point where he fully tries to take Bobby away. This version of The Kid from Left Field has the exact same plot point. There is a CPS worker who gets a call from a neighbor to check on the kid, makes a whole bunch of ridiculous misunderstandings like seeing cat food in the fridge and assuming that's what the kid is eating, even though they have a cat.
Poor kid has to eat cat food when there's nothing else around.
Well, maybe the cat food was for the cat.
And even the same misunderstanding in King of the Hill where the dad and the kid are play fighting and she sees it and takes it as him beating on the kid. The big difference from King of the Hill is in King of the Hill, the CPS worker is shown as a bad person, overstepping their bounds, that eventually gets run out of town, while in this movie they treat her as being reasonable. I thought for a while they were setting her up for a downfall and getting fired, especially when a lot of characters are telling her to mind her own business.
What I really need to know about is his home life.
Why?
Because I think there may be some serious problems of neglect.
Well, look, I don't know what you're after, but from what I can see, he's healthy and perfectly happy.
I'm not a police officer.
And why don't you mind your own business?
You don't think for 1 minute that judge is going to send that boy to a foster home? Just because you think the father is not a good housekeeper?
I'm not talking about housekeeping. I'm talking about giving a person a chance to have a decent life. We should place him in a foster home, or at the very least, put him in one of those welfare camps.
They even have this weird scene where just the sight of the kid waving to his dad gets her stewing and concerned. She actually gets a court order to take the kid away to a foster home, even though the dad has been a perfectly fine parent the whole movie, and the movie still paints her as legitimately caring. When the dad gets the manager gig, she changes her tune, saying now he can support the kid and he won't have to go to a foster home. Never mind, at this point of the movie, she thinks he's beating the kid and is an alcoholic. The dad does drink, but they never really show him drunk or show it affecting his parenting. They even have her at the end doing an okay sign to the dad, like she was doing him a favor. The whole plot point was baffling because, honestly, she was not acting like a good person or in the best interest of the kid the entire time, but she's never called out on that. Number 19, Safe at Home. It's generous to call this a movie. It's more like a movie crew had access to the 1962 Yankees spring training facility, set up some cameras to capture action, and then filmed 3 or 4 scenes with Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris so they could list them as the stars to capitalize on their 1961 home run record chase, and made a movie around that. It's closer to an Opie-centric episode of The Andy Griffith Show with a cameo by the Yankees than a movie starring Mantle and Maris, but somehow they stretched the runtime into an hour and 40 minutes. Obviously, this movie has some of the best baseball players, but it's only spring training with no actual competitive games, and it's a stretch to call Mantle and Maris actors.
Hey, Bill, I hate to tell you this, but you can't spell.
What do you mean?
Bill, I hate to shock you, but Marvelous has an O-U-S on the end of it.
O-U-S? Who said so?
Webster.
I do like the look of extreme disappointment by Mantle and Maris at this kid for missing a fly ball. Also, whatever machine this is, it looks freaking awesome and I want one.
All right, come on now. You start moving when that ball does. Stay with it. Stay with it.
Even though this movie clearly has some of the best baseball players, I can't in good conscience put it near the top of the rankings just because it's only spring training footage. Number 18, The Kid from Cleveland. This movie is very similar to Safe at Home in that it's a story about a kid that at one point visits spring training of a team, and a lot of the movie is filmed at spring training. But they take this one a step further in that basically every person in the Cleveland Indians organization makes an appearance, with over a dozen with speaking lines. You have team owner Bill Veeck, Lou Boudreau, Tris Speaker, Hank Greenberg, Bob Feller, Gene Bearden, Satchel Paige, Steve Gromek, Joe Gordon, Mickey Vernon, Ken Keltner, Larry Doby, Ray Boone, Dale Mitchell, Bob Kennedy, and Jim Hagan, all with speaking roles. Unlike Safe at Home, this movie also covers some of the regular season, including the 1948 World Series that the Indians won, and part of the 1949 season. The downside is all the game footage is just actual footage from the World Series and those 1949 regular season games, but it's still kind of cool that they keep the 1948 World Series as it happened, including highlighting Bob Feller getting lit up in Game 5, even though he has a speaking role in the movie.
Here comes manager Lou Boudreau to the mound, and it looks as if Feller is through.
Tough luck, Bob. They've hit you pretty hard. I'm going to make a change.
That's tough luck for Bob. Losing that two-hitter in the first game of the series, and now this. From the mound to the showers is the longest walk in the world.
Once in a blue moon, they'll add footage, like near the end of the movie where Veck recounts an inspiring story about Larry Doby's first game in the majors, which broke the color barrier for the American League. In this tale, Doby strikes out his first at-bat and goes to the dugout feeling dejected, like he let down every African American in the country. Joe Gordon, seeing Doby dejected, purposefully strikes out in the next at-bat to show Doby that it isn't a big deal. And Doby is now among teammates and no different than any other player. Heartwarming story, made even better by Doby, Gordon, and Veck playing themselves. But here's the weird thing. It's completely made up. Gordon was on third base during Doby's first at-bat, and in Gordon's next plate appearance, he flew out. I have to wonder what the conversation was between the director and Doby and Gordon when they informed him that this didn't happen. The director probably said something like, yeah, it didn't happen, but it's a good story and makes you both look good, so just go with it. As far as the movie's main plot, the kid that hangs around the team is a troubled youth that gets in trouble with the law and gets surprisingly dark at times. But it certainly wasn't a good movie, with the Cleveland Press's movie reviewers saying of the movie's premiere, "The kid from Cleveland is interesting, in that it's fun to see your hometown in the movies, but the script, direction, and acting are atrocious." Number 17, Tiger Town. Tiger Town is a bit of a weird movie. I genuinely like the first third or half of the movie, but it falls off quite a bit in the second half. It's the story of a kid in Detroit named Alex who bonds with his dad over baseball. His family is struggling financially, and it's Detroit in the 80s, but the biggest blow to Alex is when he comes home to find his dad had died. Alex deals with this by putting all his energy into cheering for his favorite player, the over-the-hill and washed-up Billy Young, played by Roy Schneider. Billy Young has been struggling all year in what will probably be the last year of his career, hitting under 200 with only 50 games left. In a crucial situation with Young at the plate, Alex hopes so hard he goes full constipated, and Billy comes through with a home run to win the game. Alex does the same at the next game, and Billy continues to rake. For an away game, Alex tries this at home, but it doesn't work. So Alex realizes he needs to be in attendance for every home game the rest of the year in order for the Tigers to possibly win the pennant. The soundtrack for this movie sounds like a 90s video game at times. And the bully in the movie is certainly a character.
Want to hear the game?
The baseball action is passable. Roy Schneider doesn't look too hot at times, but the extras seem fine. Where this movie falls off for me is the last 20 minutes, where it devolves into one long sequence of Alex trying to get to the stadium for the crucial last game of the year. I'm not exaggerating. It's 20 minutes of Alex trying to bus, bike, and run to the stadium, and that's pretty much it. It seems like they had a decent 1-hour movie and decided they needed to make it an hour and a half, so they padded it out with this unnecessary extended sequence. They also tried to show some realistic stats, but most of it is nonsense. With 50 games left in the year, Billy Young is hitting 196. On the last game of the year, he's hitting 320. I'm going to use Alan Trammell's 1983 to show how crazy this would be. Alan Trammell had 309 at-bats with 50 games left in the year, and had 196 at-bats in the last 50 games. If he was hitting 196 in those first 309 at-bats, he would have to hit 515 in the last 196 at-bats to bring his season total to 320. Young also had 47 RBIs while hitting 34 home runs, which is beyond ridiculous. The record for fewest RBIs with a 30-plus home run season in baseball history is 59, achieved by Cedric Mullins, Kyle Schwarber, Curtis Granderson, and Jed Giarco. And all 4 of those players had exactly 30 home runs. The fewest RBIs for a player with 34 home runs is 77 by both Gary Sanchez and Hank Aaron. 47 RBIs and 34 home runs is almost impossible, especially when they show in the movie that he had a 10-game stretch with 14 RBIs and 3 home runs. That means in the other 152 games that year, Young had 31 home runs and only 33 RBIs. Putting that all aside, again, I'll say the first half of the movie was pretty good, but it kind of loses me in the second half. Number 16, The Pride of St. Louis. This is the story of Dizzy Dean, played by Dan Daly. Getting the bad out of the way, Dan Daly looks like he learned how to throw at the Hunters Hitters youth baseball camp.
Under the tutelage of Hunter Pence, your child will sharpen his skills using proprietary training techniques, such as throwing like you don't have an elbow.
Between you and you, show me something.
I couldn't really figure out how they filmed some of the baseball scenes. They'll have Dan Daly clearly in front of a background, and then they'll show some further away shots that look like actual baseball with a few pitches with movement. I think that isn't Dan Daly in the far away shots, and instead some baseball players stand-in. Whenever they do faraway shots, the athleticism seems to be a bit better, but when they cut to closer shots, it's a bit lacking. I'm also curious how they managed to show the ball at times because there's a few shots that clearly have a superimposed ball, including 2 instances where a pitcher is hit by a comebacker and the ball immediately disappears from existence as if it was absorbed into the pitcher's body. As for the movie itself, I need to do a side note on my opinion of biopics. There's really 2 main types of biopics. The first are ones that focus on a sliver of someone's life. It's centered around a main event or an important period of their life, like Lincoln focusing on the end of the Civil War and the ratification of the 13th Amendment, or 42 focusing on Jackie Robinson going from the Negro Leagues to the minors to the Dodgers. Both of these movies tell a very specific period of time in their lives, allowing the movie to maintain core themes, tell a story where each act contributes to the main conflict, and there's one main resolution to the story. In other words, it's focused, which I think makes for a better movie. I generally like these types of biopics. Then there's the other type of biopic, which just covers a person's whole life from event to event, and sometimes covering decades. These are a mixed bag for me. Each act tends to contain a different conflict, many times unrelated to anything that came before or came after, and the only commonality is that you have the same person as the central character. I would much rather have watched a documentary on the person than trying to force that structure into a motion picture format. They tend to be aimless, have muddled themes, and not a strong through line from act to act. The Pride of St. Louis is the second type. It covers nearly 20 years of Dizzy Dean's life, and each act is really its own thing with a different conflict and resolution. I do think Dan Daly did a good job portraying Dizzy Dean, especially since Dan Daly is from New York and he's trying to portray an Arkansas-born man with a heavy accent and an interesting way of speaking, to say the least.
2 kinds of hitters ever bothered me when I was in there, else I'd still be pitching. And that was left-handy hitters and right-handy hitters. They both of them can be mighty troublesome to a pitcher. And there they go off with the pitch, running like hens will open. Looks like a hit and run. Only Georgie McQuinn, he only caught part of the ball, and it was the wrong part.
But that's really the only anchor of the movie. The rest of it just goes from life event to life event. Maybe that could work, but they get a lot of his life story wrong, to the point where they ended up telling a worse story. It's as if someone got a description of Dizzy Dean's personality, a few broad strokes of his life, and then just kind of made everything up. An example is the first 30 minutes of the movie where he goes from Arkansas to the St. Louis Cardinals. In the movie, they have a scout see him in Arkansas, he signs with the Cardinals, and goes to their minor league affiliate in Houston. He does really well against the White Sox in an exhibition game, and the next year he's on the major league roster and has success from the get-go. The real story of what happened in those years is way more interesting. He lied about his age to join the Army, where he played for the Fort Sam Houston baseball team, was spotted by a Cardinals scout there, and paid to get out of the military to join the Cardinals organization. Excelled in the minor leagues in Houston, and got called up to the Cardinals to pitch in the last game of the 1930 season, where he threw a complete Game 3 hitter and got the win. But he didn't pitch for the Cardinals in 1931 because he would go on spending sprees and charge it to the team's account. His aloof personality was grating on his teammates, and nobody wanted him around. Even though he was clearly one of the best pitchers on the team, they sent him back to the minor leagues where he proceeded to win league MVP and was back in the majors in 1932. That is way more interesting and has more conflict than what they showed in the movie. This movie also gets a lot of details wrong in an aggravating manner, like having a member of the Cleveland Indians on the National League All-Star team, mentioning Hank Greenberg hitting over 20 home runs in 1941 when he was in the Army that year, or having a lot of events out of order or not during the right year. 1933 to 1939 is just kind of one muddled mess in this movie where you never know what year we're in. If you don't mind the here's the whole life of someone in order biopic style and don't mind a lot of the inaccurate details, maybe you could enjoy this movie, but it ain't for me. Number 15, Bang the Drum Slowly. This movie stars a young Robert De Niro right before he had his massive breakout. He'd follow up Bang the Drum Slowly with an impressive string of movies over the next 8 years, including Mean Streets, The Godfather Part 2, Taxi Driver, The Deer Hunter, and Raging Bull. This is a pretty highly regarded movie, reportedly Al Pacino's favorite De Niro film, but it's highly regarded because it's a legit drama and an incredibly sad movie, and not due to how well they portray baseball on the field. It's the story of star pitcher Henry Wiggin, played by Michael Moriarty, of the New York Mammoths, clearly based off the New York Yankees, who finds out teammate catcher Bruce Pearson, De Niro's character, is terminally ill with Hodgkin's disease. Pearson, not wanting to have the rest of the team know, swears Wiggin to secrecy, but the problem is Pearson isn't that good of a ball player, isn't liked by most of his teammates, and the team was intending to cut him. Wiggin spends the entire movie protecting Pearson, negotiating into his own contract that the team can't cut Pearson, and involving Pearson in as many team activities as possible, to the chagrin of his teammates, in order to give Pearson as much comfort in his dying days. So why don't I have this movie ranked very highly if it's a well-regarded drama? Baseball is really just a backdrop to tell this story and not the focus of the movie. In the first 1 hour and 20 minutes, there's maybe 2 minutes of actual baseball, 30 seconds of which is De Niro running around the bases in slow motion. During a baseball montage in the later part of the movie, they just cut to stock MLB footage as there was a noticeable change in film grain from shot to shot. But there's not a single instance in the movie where you know the score or the game situation. Again, baseball is just a setting to tell this story and not in any way the focus. It isn't until the last 10 minutes of the movie where you get a couple consecutive minutes of the actors portraying on-field action. And the extras portray it fine. Moriarty looks decent in his pitching form, but nothing amazing. De Niro's swing and running is a little rough, but his catching looks okay. Ultimately, everything is fine and nothing egregiously bad, but the movie just gets knocked down a few slots on this ranking because there's so little baseball on screen. Number 14, Death on the Diamond. This movie is about a death on the diamond.
He's dead.
It's a murder mystery as multiple St. Louis Cardinals players get murdered during a pennant run. Is it the crooked gamblers with money on the line betting against the Cardinals that did it? Is it the umpire that hates some players on the team? Is it the businessman that wants to take over the team? Or is it a player that's jealous of the other players? They set it up like it's going to be an episode of a whodunit TV show like Columbo or Monk. But what's disappointing is instead of having that ending where they have the detective character go through all the clues and reveal who the killer is, the killer just ends up getting caught in the act of trying to kill someone. And after the killer admitted it, without the detective even doing anything, the detective goes, "Yep, I knew it was him."
But Jimmy, when did you first suspect Patterson?
In the clubhouse.
And that just deflates the whole setup. Even Scooby-Doo does a better job on their reveals. For the baseball scenes, pretty solid. I think there's a lot of actual MLB footage used, but there's a few scenes and camera angles that I thought were MLB footage that turned out to be the actors. So they did a pretty good job seamlessly combining the two. Most movies during this time period that use footage also mostly limit it to home games, so they only need to film in one stadium, but this movie shows a number of different stadiums during a road trip, which is nice. There are a couple continuity errors, like they're playing Chicago and it cuts to footage of the Cardinals playing New York, but if you're not paying attention to minor things like that, what this movie shows works pretty well. Number 13, 12, and 11, Firemen Save My Child, Elmer the Great, and Alibi Ike. These three movies go together because they're part of the Joe E. Brown baseball trilogy. Brown was basically to the 1930s what Jim Carrey was to the 1990s, a rubber-faced comedian that starred in a number of popular comedies, many times relying on his facial expressions and physical comedy for a lot of the laughs. Sometimes a little too much. The start of Elmer the Great has an entire 3-minute sequence of him trying to get out of bed. But outside of comedy and acting, Brown had another big love in life, which was baseball. He was a pretty successful ball player. He actually played with semi-pro teams in his youth and was offered a contract by the Boston Red Sox in 1911 when he was 19 years old, which he turned down because he simultaneously had a lucrative offer to star in a burlesque show, and he realized acting had better opportunities for a long-term career. Brown even had in his contract with Warner Brothers that the studio would provide him his own baseball team, which was called the Joe E. Brown's First National Allstars, and when he wasn't acting, the team would travel up and down the West Coast barnstorming against other semi-pro, college, or Negro League teams. His love of baseball comes through in his baseball trilogy, which all have a lot of things in common. Brown always plays a star baseball player, a star pitcher for the Cardinals in Fireman Save My Child, a star hitter for the Cubs in Elmer the Great, who hit 67 home runs in a single season, and a star two-way player for the Cubs in Alibi Ike. All three movies have him start in a small town and then signing with a major league club. All three movies have him very aloof, seemingly not taking baseball that seriously, with him prioritizing being a fireman in Fireman Save My Child, him just being lazy in general in Elmer the Great and not really caring about baseball at all, and him constantly distracted in Alibi Ike, where if he ever does something bad in a game, he comes up with an excuse, hence the name Alibi Ike. Two of the movies have significant gambling side plots with gamblers trying to get Brown to throw ball games, and both have him arriving late to the final game due to gambling shenanigans. Elmer the Great has him double-crossing the gamblers by betting on his own team.
I bet on the Cubs to win.
Get out there and warm up.
Warm up? Hell, I ain't been cool since February.
And Alibi Ike has him getting abducted by the gamblers and arriving only in the ninth inning of the pennant-clinching game. What's really interesting in Alibi Ike is the last game is a night game. Major League Baseball did have its first night game in 1935, but the game in the movie is supposed to be at Wrigley Field in Chicago, which didn't have its first night game until 1988. But I guess the producers of the movie didn't realize that would be the case in 1935. Because these are comedies, there's a lot of goofiness going on, but Brown can clearly play, and especially his hitting looks on par with other noted baseball-centric actors like Kevin Costner. If you were to only watch one of them, I'd say go with Alibi Ike as it looks the most polished of the three. Number 10, The Pride of the Yankees. This movie, put side by side with the Babe Ruth story, is an interesting comparison. Both movies are about Yankee legends that had recently passed. The Pride of the Yankees about Lou Gehrig, and the Babe Ruth story about, well, Babe Ruth. But their execution is polar opposites. The Babe Ruth story focuses on a very fictionalized telling of Babe Ruth's life, filled with exaggerations and making him out to be the greatest person that ever lived, while Pride of the Yankees is way more reserved, telling a closer to true life story. It's almost as if the movies are reflections of the two different personalities, Babe Ruth being the character that played up to his legend, his public personality, and was larger than life, while Gehrig was the reserved individual that kept quiet and private and out of the public spotlight. This is even highlighted in the movie as Babe Ruth plays himself and has an appearance in front of the press with a sick child, posing for the cameras, while Gehrig waits until the press is gone before he talks to the kid. Gehrig was viewed as such a reserved personality that this film almost wasn't made. Film producer Sam Goldwyn had no desire to make a movie on Gehrig, considering him boring and saying, "Baseball is box office poison." Writer Nevin Bush persuaded Goldwyn to sit down and watch Gehrig's farewell speech. Goldwyn watched the speech multiple times and was so moved he immediately contacted Eleanor Gehrig to buy the rights to the film. A lot of the movie's accuracy and real-to-life portrayal of Gehrig can be attributed to Eleanor Gehrig, Lou's wife, whose relationship with him plays a major role in the movie, who after his death made it her mission to preserve his legacy. She served as a consultant on the film and felt Gary Cooper's portrayal of her late husband was almost too accurate. She reportedly said, "He had every one of his mannerisms down to a science, and he is so like my husband in the picture that there were a few times when I felt I couldn't bear it." As far as this ranking is concerned, though, the movie leans way more into Gehrig as a person and telling his life story, and way less on actually caring about baseball. There's less than 10 minutes of baseball action in the whole movie, some of it stock Yankee footage, and Cooper himself is really the only actor filmed multiple times either swinging a bat or fielding a ball, and to mixed results. They did have baseball player Babe Herman double for Cooper in the faraway shots, which are much more convincing. There's a little bit of a legend around if the right-handed Cooper trained to learn to play left-handed, or if they just flipped the footage so he could act it out right-handed, but it looked left-handed. After seeing this swing, I don't believe they flipped the footage, at least for his swing. And sure enough, in 2013, baseball researcher Tom Schreiber went into extensive detail investigating if the movie had any flipped scenes and concluded they only flipped footage for a brief scene early in the movie in his days at Hartford where he had to throw left-handed. Apparently, Kubrick could do a passable left-handed swing, but throwing left-handed was too much of an ask. Number 9, Blue Skies Again. Blue Skies Again is the fictional story of the first woman to make an appearance in a spring training game. The good, they've clearly got a bunch of ball players playing the roles as the practice shots are pretty good. The bad is once they get to an actual game, that goes out the window with excessive cuts, close-ups, and you don't really see much baseball actually played. Robin Bartow, the woman playing for the team, is pretty competent. Watching her make plays, she clearly has some sort of baseball or softball background. And sure enough, after looking it up, they plucked her off of a community college softball team for this role. Does she look like a major league caliber player? Not so much. But does she look a lot better than a lot of other actors trying to portray baseball in film? Definitely. The movie itself is not very good. The owner of the team, the fictional Denver Devils, is over the top scummy. He makes Rachel Phelps in Major League seem like a well-adjusted, nice person.
Well, who's got the marshmallows?
Paul is here
Would you
because...
stand up for a second, please? Turn around once.
Paul's here because
Liz, I was thinking of a more voluptuous type.
I said Paul's wall play.
I think I've been turned down.
Not exactly. You were never considered.
Thanks for your time.
Miller?
Yes, sir.
Stack those logs, will you? Not that way. They have to form a pyramid. If you are very quiet, Miller, and you do a very, very good job of stacking those logs, your chances of being fired go down to 90%.
The story is also nonsensical. Paula Fradkin just crashes spring training and gets an individual tryout despite no character or scout ever seeing her play because an agent sets it up. And even that agent hadn't seen her play. Being a baseball fan, the amount of effort, scouting, and history it takes to even get a tryout for the lowest level minor leagues, and how much time it takes to even get from the minors to the majors, means no unknown woman or man is going to get an individual tryout for a major league roster on a whim. It's also weird that the first spring training game is treated like an actually important game, with the starting pitchers going 7+ innings. I know starting pitcher usage has gone way down in recent years, but even in the early 80s, they didn't have starters going more than 2 or 3 innings in the first week of spring training. It's also a pretty boring film with not many redeemable characters. Almost everyone in the movie acts like an absolute jackass. But the reason it makes it up to this spot in the rankings is because they got actual baseball players, or at least athletes, in this movie. For example, Calvin Cozart, who played the pitcher Wall Street Chandler, said in an interview he got up to 88 miles per hour on the gun. Number 8, The Winning Team. This is the story of Grover Cleveland Alexander as played by Ronald Reagan. In other words, a baseball player named after a past president played by a future president. I gotta give Ronnie some credit here, his pitching isn't that bad. It's rare for a movie to show a full pitch from an actor without any cuts, but they do that all the time here. His pitching isn't incredible, but it's definitely passable for a movie in 1952. It's kind of weird how early in the movie, the 41-year-old Ronald Reagan is supposed to be playing a 21-year-old Alexander, which, no. But what makes it worse is characters that look near the same age as Reagan constantly call him boy, which stands out as awkward. Later on in the movie, especially during the 1926 World Series, it does a pretty common trick of splicing in real baseball footage. As far as I can tell, I believe most of this footage is from either the 1951 or 1952 season. A lot of it is hard to pinpoint as there's not many clues to go off of, but I'm almost certain that this is a single by Bill Miller against the White Sox on May 4th, 1952. The movie is a little sloppy at times splicing in this footage. For instance, this is supposed to be a single with nobody on base in the movie, but you can clearly see a runner scoring from third. This is supposed to be a bases empty situation, but again, you can see a runner on third. They also mess up the uniform colors sometimes, where Alexander will be pitching to a Yankee in pinstripes, and then in the spliced footage it's a batter clearly wearing away grays. I think this one is Don Newcombe of the Dodgers pitching to Solly Hemus of the Cardinals in 1951, which would mean the catcher would be Roy Campanella. And I don't think I need to explain why having a black catcher in 1926 doesn't really track. Also, since they're supposed to be playing the 1926 Yankees in the World Series, who had Gehrig and Ruth, they do once in a while splice in footage from either the late 20s or early 30s Yankees, which is really noticeable as the film quality drops quite a bit whenever they do this. But my biggest gripe with the movie on accuracy is how they changed the story of Grover Cleveland Alexander's life to make it a more uplifting Hollywood movie. I'm going to give you the real timeline of Alexander's life and then show you what the movie does to manipulate it. While playing in the minor leagues in 1909, Alexander took a ball off his temple while trying to break up a double play, which knocked him unconscious for 3 days and gave him double vision for almost a year, which kept him out of baseball. The double vision went away as he returned to baseball, making the Phillies and becoming one of the best pitchers in the league. He was drafted into the Army during World War I, missed most of 1918 and a good chunk of 1919, spending time at the front where he goes deaf in one ear due to constant artillery barrages. He returned to baseball after the war, but a combination of the head injury he got in the minors, the PTSD from the war, as well as the hearing loss, he began to suffer from epileptic seizures, but kept his condition hidden and took to the bottle to self-medicate. Since nobody knew he was an epileptic, and he's heavily drinking, whenever he suffered a seizure, people assumed he was just drunk. After collapsing in a game while playing for the Chicago Cubs, it was the last straw for the team and they suspended him and later waived him. The Cardinals claimed him, he bounced back, and he had a career-defining 1926 World Series where he not only won on 2 complete games, but pitched the last 2.2 innings of Game 7 on 0 days rest, earning the save in a 1-run game. Then his career went downhill. The epilepsy and alcoholism took their toll, and he was out of baseball in 1930. He couldn't get a coaching job due to his reputation as a drunk, and he ended up playing for the House of David, which is basically the Jewish baseball version of the Harlem Globetrotters, got divorced, worked as an attraction in a flea circus, and never really got his life back on track. What the movie does is take everything after 1930, basically 20 years of his life spiraling out of control, and moves it up to before the World Series in 1926, making it so he's at his lowest point right before the Cardinals pick him up, and he has an amazing comeback in the 1926 World Series. And then the movie ends. Instead of accurately portraying a pretty sad story of someone being an alcoholic and a shell of themselves for the second half of their life, it's instead a stumbling block before his highest high, really twisting around the story to make it more Hollywood. Also, the 1926 World Series famously ended with Babe Ruth getting caught stealing as the last out in Game 7. This movie instead has Alexander striking out the last batter. I get why they changed it all around because they wanted their happy ending, but it isn't too historically accurate. Now, I will admit, if you're not familiar with Alexander's life story and you're not paying extreme detail to the baseball scenes like I am where you spot errors, the movie mostly works, and the baseball scenes flow pretty well. That's why, despite me criticizing the accuracy and some of the errors, it still finds a decently high spot on this list. Number 7, Damn Yankees. Damn Yankees is a musical from 1958, and as you can see, it looks identical to how baseball looks. But seriously, this movie tells a story somewhat inspired by The Devil and Daniel Webster, where an individual sells their soul to the devil for something in return. In this case, Joe Boyd, a diehard Washington Senators fan, sells his soul to become the greatest baseball player ever and to lead the Senators to a pennant. Tab Hunter plays the new and improved version, and his baseball ability isn't amazing, but it isn't terrible. Because of that, most of the shots of him swinging are from shoulder up or pretty quick cuts in the field. He does make a nice play here. But the movie does a really neat trick. They made the main character number 2, and from behind or from a distance, you can't tell the difference between him and the real number 2 from the 1957 Washington Senators, Roy Sievers. Because of this, they splice in real footage they recorded with movie cameras of the Senators playing the Yankees in 1957. I was able to figure out exactly when they recorded all this footage, which was a weekend 3-game series from July 5th to July 7th. You can piece together all the real baseball footage from these 3 games in the game logs on Baseball Reference. You have Jim Lemon hitting into a double play, Bobby Richardson hitting into a double play, Roy Sievers hitting a triple, which then cuts to footage of Julio Bequer trotting around the bases to make it look like a home run. There's a Roy Sievers home run from July 6th. They even get tricky splicing different plays together. A foul out to the catcher shows Rocky Bridges at the plate, Roy Sievers fouling off a pitch, which was a pop out to first, and then footage of Yogi Berra catching a pop foul. It is really cool that we have movie quality footage from 1957. In making my videos, I run into the problem of finding high quality footage from older eras. Try to find footage of Ted Williams or Mickey Mantle that isn't grainy or out of focus or heavily deteriorated. It's pretty tough. Here we have a Mickey Mantle at-bat in full film quality, and it's amazing. It would be incredible if Warner Brothers still had all the unused footage somewhere, unearthed it, digitized it, and made it available online. Number 6, The Stratton Story. I really like this movie. Jimmy Stewart is excellent as always. It's the true story of Monty Stratton, who was a star White Sox pitcher in the 1930s, but his career ended abruptly after his age 26 season, where he lost his leg in an off-season hunting accident. Almost a decade later, wearing a prosthetic leg, Stratton made a comeback to pitching in the Texas leagues. Now, it's a little weird to have the over 40-year-old Stewart portray the 22-year-old Stratton at the beginning of the movie, and his throwing motion isn't incredible, but it's passable and definitely better than other actors like Anthony Perkins. They do have some real players portraying themselves, such as Bill Dickey of the Yankees and Jimmy Dykes, but they do kind of mess with the real games a bit. In Stratton's rookie season in 1934, he only pitched in one game against the Tigers, but the movie changes this to the Yankees and even shows Joe DiMaggio rounding third, even though DiMaggio didn't make his major league debut until 2 years later in 1936. In his first game in 1935, they show him getting the win against the Yankees. He did play the Yankees his first game that year, but Stratton's White Sox lost 5-2. But nobody cares about these minor nitpicks about what team they actually played and what exactly happened in the game log. If the movie gets those things right, I'll give it credit, but a movie getting those things wrong isn't really a negative. But where this movie shines is the Texas League games as Stratton makes his comeback. Although I am disappointed that they threw to third on this flyout when they could have easily gotten the runner at second. Stewart is portraying a pitcher with a prosthetic leg, and it's believable. And the game follows real strategy because if a pitcher you're facing can't run, you bunt him to death. This is actually what ended up ending Stratton's run in Texas after 2 years. Other teams realized they could just keep bunting on him and basically get free hits. His hits per 9 innings pitched ballooned to 13.5 in 1947 with the Waco Dons. The opposing team also intentionally walks a batter to get to Stratton in a key situation in the game, realizing he has trouble running to first. Again, really good movie. I recommend it if you enjoy Jimmy Stewart films. Number 5, The Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings. This movie tells the story of Negro League pitcher Bingo Long and catcher Leon Carter. Not so subtle callbacks to Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson, as they're fed up with being treated like crap by the team owners and decide to create their own barnstorming team to travel the country and make money. Billy D. Williams looks fine as a pitcher, while James Earl Jones has a bit of a rough swing, but where this movie excels is when it's playing up to the showmanship of a barnstorming team. Dancing entrances, trick plays, props, something that used to exist back in those days and is starting to make a comeback with a team like the Savannah Bananas now. Billy T. Williams even wears a yellow suit just like the owner of the Bananas, something that might be a coincidence but might also be an influence. Notably, when they do the trick plays, it's not the main actors doing them and probably real baseball players, which makes them more authentic. I've mentioned the Traveling House of David baseball team a few times in this video, but this was the movie where I first saw them, and I was thinking, a Jewish team called the House of David, complete with a Star of David patch on traditional Hasidic garb, long black coats, hats, side curls, and beards, along with a vendor selling lox, cream cheese, and bagels while displaying a going out of business sign. I didn't know if this was an in-movie joke, so I looked it up, and that's where I found out about the real team, something at the time I was completely unaware of. Along with barnstorming black teams, apparently there were barnstorming Jewish teams that played up the stereotypes to sell tickets. Again, this movie excels more when it plays up to the showmanship aspect of barnstorming and plays into the aesthetic of a ragtag traveling team. There isn't much straightforward baseball action, which makes it a little difficult to rate in terms of baseball authenticity, but for what it's going for, it does very well. Number 4, 1 in a Million, The Ron LaFleur Story. This made-for-TV movie starring LeVar Burton, known for being the host of Reading Rainbow, Geordi LaForge on Star Trek The Next Generation, and Kunta Kinte on Roots, tells the fascinating true story of Ron LaFleur. LaFleur was a troubled youth who on one night in 1970, while coming down off of heroin, decided to rob a local bar while brandishing a shotgun. While serving his prison sentence, he played organized baseball for the first time in his life. He was a natural, hitting .569 in the prison league in 1972, and word got out and he eventually signed with the Tigers on his release in 1973 and went on to play 9 years in the majors, leading the league in steals twice, including 97 in 1980. His 455 career steals ranks 53rd all-time. The movie came out in the middle of LaFleur's career. LaFleur was given an advanced screening of the movie and expressed surprise on how well Burton portrayed him on screen. What I saw in the movie was the real Ron LaFleur. I can really see myself in this picture, and I didn't think that would be possible because of the short time I was able to be around the cast. But LeVar Burton played Ron LaFleur to a T. He played me to reality. When this movie comes out, people will realize what a tremendous actor LeVar Burton is. I'm very surprised that LeVar was able to pick up as much about me as he was. He copied my eye actions and certain things that I say. Everything. So Burton captured LaFleur the person, but how well did he do on the baseball diamond? I'm not going to judge the prison baseball scenes too harshly because it's supposed to be Ron LaFleur in his first weeks of touching a baseball bat, and I don't know how competitive penal leagues were in the 1970s. I'll save my judgment for the scenes when he gets to the majors. Burton reportedly had a month to train and learn baseball before filming, relying on actor John McKee, manager Billy Martin, who played himself in the film, and Ron LaFleur himself. I have to say, for only training for a month, he looked decent for the most part, and Oakland University player Henry Washington acted as a double for Burton on some of the more athletic scenes. But it's seamless enough where if you didn't know it was a double, you probably wouldn't notice that it wasn't Burton. During LaFleur's tryout with the Tigers in 1973, they had the real Tigers involved playing themselves, including Bill Freehan, Norm Cash, Al Kaline, and Jim Northrup, which is impressive in its accuracy because all four were on the Tigers in 1973, but none were on the Tigers at the time of filming in 1978, so they did make an effort to accurately portray the 1973 Tigers. A number of the establishing shots and game footage were filmed before a real game between the Red Sox and Tigers on May 20th, 1978. The extras in Red Sox and Tigers uniforms were college players from Wayne State and Oakland University in Michigan, which, like any movie that uses actual baseball players as extras and not actors, makes it look that much more authentic. An article about the filming mentioned that Burton looked out of his element compared to the other extras, saying it took Burton about a dozen swings before he was able to hit the ball into fair territory, and Burton didn't come close to looking as athletic as LaFleur, but accurately predicted that film editors can work wonders because the end result looks pretty solid. Overall, very interesting real story combined with pretty decent on-field action, and there isn't much to complain about here. Solid showing all around. Number 3, Angels in the Outfield. Most people are familiar with the 90s remake, and while this movie is similar in plot, the execution is dramatically different. We never actually see the Angels, and the movie is told from the perspective of a woman reporter, who in classic 1950s style knows nothing about baseball.
The sports editor wanted the woman's angle. All I knew was that Pittsburgh was losing. This, I learned, was quite normal. Question, what is a balk? Answer, see me tomorrow.
It's cool that most of the baseball scenes were filmed at Forbes Field. The stadium has a really cool look with the Cathedral of Learning towering over the left field line, with some shots even taken from the building's rooftop. For the actual baseball, there's a mix of 1951 Pittsburgh Pirates footage and footage of the actors they captured. There's really two options you see with these old movies using real games. Some just splice in stock footage, which is usually from a bad angle and the quality is different from the movie film, and it's really noticeable. While the other option is to put an actual film camera in the stadium during a real game to take shots from different angles. The second clearly looks better as it's higher quality film, looks great, and blends in seamlessly with the actual movie, and that's what they do here. It's even difficult to figure out if some shots are the actors or the footage they captured at the real game. One slight criticism is they did rely on actors jumping to their right to make a catch a few too many times. These night shots are from a game on April 27th against the Reds. Here's a Ralph Kiner home run. Here's a Danny Murtaugh flyout to right that they make look like a hit. Here's a Wally Westlake single to left. Here's a Gus Bell single. The day game shots are from the next day, April 28th, which you tend to find games on consecutive days for movies that use this method because they book a couple days at the stadium to get all their footage. Here's a Monty Basgall single in the second, a Monty Basgall double in the sixth. Here's a Pete Reiser foul ball, which is cool to see because he's one of my favorite players of the 1940s, who could have been a star if it weren't for both World War II taking 3 years of his career, as well as him knocking himself out over a half dozen times by running into outfield walls, leading to major health complications that eventually ended his career prematurely. There's also some shots from the April 29th game against the Reds. Here's George Strickland hitting a double. One funny thing from this footage is if you think umps are bad today, this was ruled a single in real life. I repeat, this was ruled a single. This movie does have the difficulty that a lot of films have where the team is supposed to be bad early on. So on top of actors trying to depict realistic baseball action, they have to try to simultaneously look like they're bad at baseball, which is one of the hardest things to pull off. So I tend to take it easy on those scenes and take a closer look at when they're supposed to be good, which this movie captures pretty well. The fact that there's a couple shots where it's difficult to tell if it's movie footage versus real game footage is a testament to that. Overall, this is a very competently done film for the time. Number 2, Big Leaguer. I'm gonna be right up front, this isn't a particularly good movie. The movie was made by the low budget unit at MGM, a subsection of the studio that was churning out a movie a month. The director, Robert Aldrich, even said about the movie years later, the world wasn't waiting for that picture. Nothing much came of it. But why is it so high up on this ranking? Well, it's about a tryout camp for the New York Giants where 18-year-olds show up to try to make the team, and they had 4 main baseball player actors in this movie. Everyone that wasn't an actor with speaking lines clearly knew how to play. They used the New York Giants spring training facility, and I have a suspicion, although I haven't been able to confirm it, that these guys are all New York Giants minor leaguers because they can play. Unlike previous entries to this list, like Safe at Home, they're not just filming spring training. It's clear they put these guys in actual game situations and filmed from multiple angles. They need a ground out to first base that there's an error on. They actually have the pitcher throw to the batter who purposefully hits a grounder to first. They need someone to hit a single, they'll actually hit a single. Now, some of the pitching is closer to batting practice balls than real pitching, but this is the only instance where I've seen a movie do this. And check out this pretty sweet shot that almost took out the camera. As for the 4 main actors, there's a bit of a mixed bag there. Lalo Rios stands out as not seeming like that great of a baseball player, but the other 3 hold their own. William Campbell, whose character reminds me of someone else.
I'm on center field, see, and this guy hits a screamer over my head way up to the top of the wall. I go up for it, see, and I keep right on going. It's a reform school.
But I ain't a fink. Dig?
Gets a hit here and makes a few plays in the outfield. Richard Jackal is a pitcher and he throws fine. Not the fastest fastball in the world, but he can clearly throw. Jeff Richards is clearly the best of the bunch. I think he legitimately hits a home run ball here because you can see someone climbing the fence to fetch it. I was thinking he has to have some baseball background. And sure enough, almost every interviewer source leads with him previously being a minor league baseball player before he was an actor, which is technically true, but perhaps an embellishment on his part in order to get roles in baseball movies early in his career. He was in Kill the Umpire, Angels in the Outfield, and this movie. I can't find any proof that he actually played in a minor league game. Most sources will say he played shortstop for the Portland Beavers, but I am 100% sure he never played a game for them. Depending on your definition of minor leagues, you could technically say that I played in more minor league games in Portland than he did. I did find that he signed with the Portland Beavers, who immediately loaned him out to the Salem Senators, who may or may not have played him. He doesn't appear on their 1946 roster, and he got injured relatively quickly and only months later had moved to Hollywood. Clearly he can play ball, but to say he was a minor league baseball player is very generous. If he was embellishing the very brief time he was signed to the team, it's somewhat poetic because this movie makes the exact same point at the end.
It's kind of tough on the kids who didn't make it.
Yeah. Still, they'll all have something to remember for the rest of their lives. Right now, baseball is the most important thing in the world to them, but a couple of years from now, they'll be dying to try out for something else. Business, law, wife and children. And in years to come, they'll look back on these 2 weeks and be able to tell about the time they almost made the big leagues. Maybe they'll even take a special trip and drive down this way just to show their kids this very place where they were this far away from the Polo Grounds and the New York Giants.
And with that, we get to number 1. I thought long and hard about what to put here. But in the end, there was one obvious choice that stands out above every other baseball movie. At number 1, Air Bud 7th Inning Fat.